Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. Welcome to season 4 episode I lost count, even though there haven't been that many this year because we have been terrible at keeping track with things. But today our episode is called Heir to the Empire, question mark, where we'll be discussing that little bit of news that everyone already discussed last week, but because we have jobs, we discuss them the week afterwards. But today I'm very, very happy, very, very excited to finally have a friend of the channel whom I've been wanting to have on the podcast for the longest time, but because of those rowdy SAG-AFTRA, WGA strikers, unioners, we couldn't talk during Ahsoka, but finally we're here. The infamous, the notorious, the dangerous Paul Stanley.
What are we doing? No. No, but I really am happy to be here, Gus. It has been a long time coming, and we had the privilege to hang out Celebration almost 2 years ago.
Oh,
We went to
stop it.
Mos
Time.
Eisley.
Oh my
We
God,
hung
stop.
out after. I mean, it was a trip, and I'm so glad to have met you then. And you've been on Bombad, a handful of times, and it's
Mhm.
just the opportunity to be able to on Triad is fantastic. I'm excited to be here, and I'm particularly excited to talk about Dave frickin' Filoni and his
Allegedly. We'll
and
see. We'll
allegedly,
see.
allegedly,
We'll see. We
allegedly,
talk about it. Yeah.
allegedly, yeah.
It's one of those things. One of those things where we were talking before starting to record about how we're probably not even going to talk about Dave Filoni so much,
Yeah.
but the artwork for the episode's made. So
Oh,
sorry for the false advertising, everybody. But yeah, Mr. Scotty Jayro, for everyone who's watching, obviously it's not Paul Stanley, or is it?
or is it? You never
Or is it?
know. You
How
really
many
don't
times?
know.
How many times have you seen
Kiss?
Kiss?
Oh, this is actually the fact that you're bringing this was incredible. I'm seeing them at their final show in New York City on
Final?
Saturday. Yes, to our knowledge. So they have said Madison Square Garden's their last show in makeup, which is I think this like stipulation of their contract. I don't know, but with the fans. So a friend of mine, Chase, he is a huge Kiss fan. We grew up listening to Kiss together,
Not
and
Chase
he
Hauser.
not
Different
Chase
Chase.
Hauser, no, Chase Cangelosi. He's a real estate agent in Austin. So if you're in
Oh.
Austin looking for a home, reach out to him at Chasing Realty. But no, in all seriousness, him and I, we've seen pretty much Kiss. He's seen Kiss 11 times. This will be my eighth time, I believe, seeing them. So it's their final show. And yeah, Paul, I've seen Kiss a lot. I love Paul because it's the same shtick every time. Every time. It's the wild animals in the middle, let me hear you. And so it's
And they
like
eat it up every single
they
time.
eat it up. I've seen it literally 8 times. And every time I'm like, this is so good. Everyone to the left, everyone to the right, let me hear you. It's the same thing. But there's something to that. And you know what? There's a great way to tie in Dave Filoni. You can you it's kind of Dave Filoni and
They're the
Paul
same
Stanley,
person, if you
they
think
they
about
have
it.
so much in common of like, they know what people like and they give people what they want. You know what I mean?
Interesting. I see it.
Interesting.
Huh. But it's so great to bring up Paul Stanley because I think that was like my biggest impression of you when I
Ugh,
finally met you in person. Because
terrifying.
it's funny. It's funny. I always talk about Celebration on the
Yeah.
channel, especially when we're having a friend
Ooh,
that we
look at
met.
this. You got
There
this
it
shirt on
is.
and
There
everything,
it
I
is.
know.
The only way it could have been better if it was much Isley. But
Oh, I agree.
yeah, it's what Celebration's great because as I keep saying ad nauseum, it's like
Mhm.
every year it's less about the panels and more about the people. And that Anaheim was like, was it my? I think it was my second. No, it was my third celebration. But
Okay, same for me.
my third celebration, but my first one as a podcaster, right?
Yes, of course, of course,
So at this point, like you start to know the ecosystem of peers that you
of
surround
course.
yourself with on social media, and
Mhm.
you are one of them,
Of
obviously,
course.
and you have a mythical Twitter slash
That
X
but you know what? That blows
X
my mind.
persona.
That blows my mind you say that because I do it just to make people feel strange, and
Well,
I hear that so often as like, "I don't know what
success.
to think of you." I'm like, I guess it's a good thing. I keep them on edge. They don't know if I'm joking or being serious. It's kind of nice.
It's larger than life. It's like Kiss. It's like
Yeah,
Kiss
it's
if they
like
were one person on a Star Wars podcast.
that's terrifying, but it's ultimately true.
That's a compliment.
And you know what's funny too, like I was around so many people that celebration, and I made a lot. I would guess I had been people I had known adjacently, and you are one of them. And the fact that we got to meet and hit it off that night in Mos Eisley, and then
Oh,
after, in that
legendary.
hotel lobby, and like literally
Just
since
eating
then, like
Domino's pizza.
I've got his nut. Like I've got, I've. It's so weird how those interactions and celebration really do create long lasting friendships. And you were actually even in the wedding video that Alden made for
Oh,
me
that's
and my
right. That's
wife.
right.
And
That's
like
right.
it's such a weird thing that I'll never forget now because I missed that most recent celebration, but I still felt like I was there because of what some people did for the sake of, I don't
Mhm,
know,
mhm.
just being a friend. And I don't know, it's very surreal, and I'm very thankful. And yeah, I just love the fact that we could celebrate Star Wars together, not just in person, but over this call as well, on something that I'm very excited to talk about and look at too.
For sure, for sure. And it's one of those things where I think about that night again, and
Ah,
I met you and your mask or real face. I don't know
we don't know.
how to
Ooh,
say it. You just have to see for
ooh,
yourself. And then we're
ooh.
in that lobby, and that's where I formally met Trey. And now Trey's here in
Yes,
Chicago. It's one of
weird.
those, it's yeah, it's beautiful. Like
It's beautiful. I was wearing this exact. I did not realize that till just now. I was wearing this in one of the photos of me in the
it was
pool.
meant to be. It
It
was
was
meant to
meant
be.
to
If
be.
you think about it.
The
My
Lord.
one of my I did have a very sad moment during celebration, and
Ooh,
it was the last day because during the last day I'm with my buddy Guago, who you obviously met
of
because
course.
we were all there at Mach
Yeah.
Isley, and we were having like one of the final drinks at the hotel bar, and then I run into you and Jerry, and you're like, oh,
Mhm.
hey, come on, we're going to, I think it was Chris's room. We're going to Chris's room, have some drinks.
Yes.
We're gonna party,
Yes.
and I was just like, ah, because I was about to do checkout at that hotel
Uh-huh.
to go to the other one before like the flight.
Right, yep.
And that was heartbreaking. I'm like, oh man, I just met these people. It's such a good vibe. I just want to keep partying. But no, but
Uh,
alas, it was not meant to be.
but
It
the
was.
party never stops. Let's be real, you know?
It has different wavelengths.
Different wavelengths.
Now
I
we're like an
agree.
ultraviolet party, I guess, because we can't see it in physical light. We
I
have
could
to.
feel it go through me,
I can
but I
feel it,
can't.
baby.
We could be in different states and different states of mind, but I could still feel you. You know what I mean? Going through.
Uh, it's like right now, Chicago is very, very cold, but you
Yes.
whispering like that just warmed me
Warms
up.
you up.
Warmed me up.
I
I'm gonna talk about the
Nope.
extents that it warmed me up. We already did that before recording.
Blood
And
is
that's
moving.
and that is between you and I,
Oh,
the way it should be. Take that, Joe Organa.
he's got me now.
I got you. I got you. And before we go into like our main topic, I
Of
have to
course.
do those calls to action. Make sure to
Oh, God.
like, subscribe if you haven't, leave a review, like on all those things. Helps the channel. Buy a T-shirt. Gives me
Buy
two.
a tea.
Buy a T-shirt. It gives me $2 a pop, so I
Yep.
can finally upgrade this goddamn laptop. Anyway, Mr. Filoni, notorious for wearing a cowboy hat, for being
Mhm.
a fan of wolves, for Avatar: The Last Airbender,
He was that
to
kid.
an extent. Clone Wars allegedly,
Yeah.
Rebels allegedly. Uh, Helped out a little bit on that show called the Grogu Power
The
Hour.
Grogu.
Um, and now Ahsoka, which I think has been, I don't want to say controversial, but people have opinions on it.
Of
And before
course.
we talk about like the news about Dave Filoni, I wanted to kind of get the temperature since we were supposed to talk about Ahsoka before those rowdy socialists ruined everything for us.
They
Uh,
stole it.
they stole it from us.
They stole it from us.
What was your opinion of Ahsoka? Like, have you
You
been
know,
satisfied with Mr. Filoni's track record so far? And what did Ahsoka do to you or for you? I guess.
in all honesty, um, Ahsoka is that mythological storytelling that I find really compelling in Star Wars, and for the sake of myth too. I read a lot of Joseph Campbell. I study a lot of what makes. There you go. You got a book up there. Look at
He's
this.
somewhere
They
around.
see. So I'm very fond of when things get weird too, and with mythology, I mean things are just inherently weird because they're supposed to be, and I like when biology's a little bit involved, and you watch a show like Ahsoka, and there's a lot of that. A lot of the things that were set up in Rebels or even Clone Wars gets this huge payoff in a live action show, which is honestly pretty incredible. to know that the effort I put into watching an animated series, there is a deep sense of payoff when I'm sitting there next to my wife who hasn't watched any of them, and I'm like, "Oh my god, you have no idea how important this is, or how big this is, or how much of these seeds were set up, for it to grow into this show." And yeah, I was just in love with Ahsoka. I think it's a great series. I'm excited to see where it goes too, because it's not done. I don't think it's done. I'm sure there's an outline for season 2 in some capacity, but all in all, dude, I thought it was a brilliant show, and I thought it did some really great storytelling. And yeah, there's some things to be desired, but other than that, I don't know how much better you could get. You could tell it was all written by Dave, and maybe some input from Favreau, but in terms of it being a show for fans of Rebels and for fans of Clone Wars, we got it. We got exactly what I think most of us thought it would be. So I was deeply satisfied. And the whole idea of a different galaxy, that's my shit. For
Would
real.
a,
Pardon my French.
was there something though? Because I think that's one of the interesting things of a show like Ahsoka, because
Hmm.
it's following up shows that we've all either been growing up with or have been
Um,
passionate about since we first saw it, or like a show like Rebels that kind of ends the show with that. That's not a post credit scene, like that epilogue that
mhm.
leaves a lot of expectation in us like fans, specifically Star Wars fans, our theories and our minds get the best of us, and we're already
Mhm.
thinking like what those shows are or what the stories will be and all those things. So there's a lot of expectation, right?
Yeah.
Onto what these shows will be. Did you come in with those expectations, and did the show meet them, fail to meet them? Like, what was
If I'm
your point of mind in
if
that
I'm gonna
sense?
if I'm gonna be completely honest with you, no expectations are probably the best way to go into any show.
Agreed.
And not to say I didn't have any, hype or any hopes up for certain things to occur, but I can tell you that knew what we were gonna get was gonna be special. If I liked it or didn't like it, honestly didn't matter in the moment until the episode was over and I could reflect on it. But I mean, those last 4 episodes was like the greatest run of Star Wars TV at this
Hmm.
point. Just from when we see Anakin all the way to the, chapter 8 whenever we get like the Mortis arc, tease, the very and like
Mm.
you just there's just so many things in this show that were done so well and with so much care. And you can tell that now once the strike was over, all the actors are posting things like,
Hmm.
we got to do this. We were crying on set. And here's a photo of me with young Ahsoka. And here's a photo with me with Thrawn and Thrawn smoking a cigarette. Like, there's like, dude, I was like, this could not be more ideal. And, it's kind of funny. The strike obviously was for something that needed to be, something that was deserved to the people that write and that act in these huge projects and even small
Hmm.
projects. But all that being said, it was kind of nice to see all this come out after because you can enjoy
Hmm.
the show for what it was, and then now we get to hear the opinions of the creators and the actors of these shows later. So yeah, no, all in all, my expectations they were hyped. Obviously, going into it, we saw the first teaser at Celebration in 2022,
Hmm.
and I'll never forget because you saw Hera from behind, you saw Ahsoka, you didn't quite see Thrawn yet, but you got all these things and a show that I never expected. And in live action, I mean, it's a fully female led show too. It's just these things that I don't think people are, think people are taking it for granted that this actually exists.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you know, here we are now post this show, and I really loved it. What did you think of it? Did you like it?
Eh, I really liked going into it,
Mhm.
and that sounds like I'm gonna go into a negative,
Sure. Yeah.
as I was saying, I'm like, oh, why are you phrasing this in this way? This is horrible. Because I was trying to like finish the thought before actually
Sure.
starting it.
Yeah.
No, like I was very excited for Ahsoka, because Clone Wars is my favorite Star Wars animation,
Hmm.
and not to say that I don't like Rebels. I grew to love Rebels a lot, but
Hmm.
Clone Wars resonates with me a little bit more than Rebels does. So I
Yeah.
was very very excited to continue Ahsoka's story. So and it's fun. I think what's happening now with Star Wars, which is like all the different tonal varieties that we have
Mm.
for all these different shows, which I hope that it keeps.
Same.
delving into that, and we'll talk about it when we talk about the Dave news a little bit.
Mhm.
But I love that we have Andor, that we have Tales of the Jedi, that then we have Mandalorian, and now that we have Ahsoka, it's like there's like all these different flavors of Star Wars that we can be. We're sommeliers right now.
Yeah, of
We're
course.
tasting fine wine, and because all of it is so good, and I love that we can go back into a show like Ahsoka, which is so totally different from Andor, and kind of
Yeah.
go back to that innocence to an extent of the prequels, because I
Mhm.
think
Exactly.
that is something that I really appreciated about Ahsoka. It captured that magic that the prequels
Mhm.
had while also maturing it and tying into the animation, but also moving it forward
Yeah.
into a post New Republic era. So I was very happy going into the show. I mean, I have some issues with how the show ended, which I think are more systemic with streaming and
Well, that's
how
also fair. I mean, you gotta think, no ending will ever truly be satisfying
true,
for
true.
anyone. As much as I had to realize the show was coming to an end, it was also kind of bitter because we don't there's we're not guaranteed another season just yet. No one said anything officially. So like you went into this almost thinking this was a one off. And I don't think it will be, but I mean shit, you never know. You never know what's going on.
No, I agree. I just think that at least for me personally, I feel that
Mhm.
there were a lot of narrative threads that were either started to be developed or
Mhm.
merely hinted at that then
Sure.
didn't have resolution. And I'm not saying that a show or a movie for that matter needs to end with a very nice bow and like
Perfect.
everything's
Yeah.
tied up. Some things can be left as a story will continue, but there has to be like a narrative arc. I think that within a show needs or a movie needs to be tied up,
Of
even if
course.
there's like a thread that can be pulled right into
Mhm.
the next thing. And I feel like Ahsoka ended without tying things. It's just like, okay, here's a
Mhm.
thread, and
Yes.
there's a little
It could
piece
go
of
here.
and like for me,
Go
I didn't
here.
find that satisfying as much as I love the show going up into the finale. I was just like,
Yeah.
ah, okay, well, we still kind of don't know what Balin wants. Like we
Mhm.
still like we don't know Shin's deal. I feel like Ezra and Ahsoka were kind of Ouroboros. Oh shit, I watched Loki too. In the sense that their positions kind of switched, but they're
Yes.
still in the same
Yes.
position type of thing.
Yes.
Uh, they're in starting positions, just in inverse places,
Yes.
which I totally expected.
Of course.
But somehow the way it ended, I was like, ah, I was like, oh, okay.
It was weirdly enough a finale for the character Ahsoka than it was a finale for everyone else. And
Hmm.
I guess maybe that's the way I see it, as like she had her bookend with Anakin,
Hmm.
and there was the bookend of the idea that she can train someone without, even passing on the I guess the misteachings of her master onto them. So like it, to me, in terms of like the thematic analysis of it, I was satisfied in that capacity. But I
Hmm.
also agree, you have a scene, and I think everyone will agree to this. You didn't get to see Ezra or Hera, hug in that moment. And I know that's
Hmm.
silly, but there is a moment of gratification where she's been looking for this person and they can't even unite in a physical capacity until they cut. And maybe that's on purpose. I don't know. But like Balin, we all know,
Hugs
we
are
all,
infamous in Star Wars. Remember
oh, of
Force
course.
Awakens?
Yes.
Oh,
Oh my God.
Chewbacca didn't hug Leia. Oh my god.
No, God, it was endless. No,
Yeah.
but like Ray Stevenson's death too, obviously it's a big thing that we
Hmm.
have to bring up, but like, God, I want more Balin. And the
Oh,
ending of
we'll
that
get it. We'll get it.
episode, dude, was just like there's so much tease for what could come and what we could see visually in the maybe in Dave's future movie, or even, Mandalorian, or the next series of, Ahsoka episodes. I don't know. I agree though. There is a level that could have been probably amped up to, and I think it could have been the perfect series ending, almost like Mando season 2 was. It's just there was nothing that could be better than that in terms
Hmm.
of, how huge something could feel. And it was great, but I agree. There is some things left to be desired, and that's okay. That's what being a fan is like. We can't always be 100% happy with the things we get, but as long as we
That's
find some
very
way to
true. That's
the
very,
one as
especially
long
a Star
as
Wars fan.
well, look, and like we were talking about the Beatles before we started recording. Like, would I have wanted that to be their last single? I don't know. I like "Free as a Bird." That's one of my
Hmm.
favorite songs by them from '95.
Hmm.
And like now that they found this, like I don't know, it's kind of a weird, different bookend. I that's part of it. That's part of growing up in this space and in this fandom is kind of having to realize what you want might not fit the narrative means of what the story is telling you just yet. But neither here nor there. I'm glad to know that you enjoyed it up until the ending, and that some people
It's not to say that I didn't enjoy the
no, no, no.
ending.
I know.
It's that I to me, like, that ending and I think it's the nature of, like, how a lot of these Andor being the exception because Andor had 12 episodes, the
Yes.
nature of streaming nowadays, where it's just like you
Mhm.
have such a limited amount of episodes that I feel
Mhm.
sometimes it drew I don't wanna say drag, because like, sometimes stories need to take their time, but
Yeah.
sometimes it rushes way too much,
Oh yeah.
and I feel that that was kind of the problem with where Ahsoka ended. It kind of for
Mhm.
me, it felt like a mid-season finale
I agree.
instead of a season finale, and that's why I was
Mhm.
just like, "Oh, okay, well, yeah, great, but what's next?"
What's next? And I agree, and that's the other thing too. The one of the struggles of this show, and it has to do with the strike, but we don't quite know when the next Star Wars series is going to release. And I think there's something to knowing, okay, well, this ended not exactly how I wanted, but I can still look forward to whatever. And right now, I
Mhm,
know we
mhm.
have Acolyte in the works and Skeleton Crew and Man and Andor season 2, but we still don't know when the hell this is going to be coming out. I'm Jones, and if I'm dying to know. I really am. I just want to know. I just want to look forward to something. And right now, I'm like everything's so up in the air.
But it feels though with the kind of snowball stuff that we've been getting from the past week and a half, well, just a
Yes.
week, with the Filoni news and then the
Hmm.
Daisy Ridley stuff. That which the Daisy Ridley stuff's a nothing burger, but people
Yeah. Yeah.
need to make more of it than it is because
Of
that's the
course.
nature of Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
I think that they're preparing to like
Do a
announce
drop.
things and be like, "Boom,
I
here we
hope
go,
so.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays." Uh, and to that end, we got the new. We've been keep talking about the news and Filoni, and the news is that Filoni has finally been made heir to the empire? Question mark.
Interesting.
He's finally destroyed Kathy Kennedy and
Mhm.
usurped the throne, and is now the CEO of Lucasfilm.
Dude, that Variety article, or it was Vanity Fair, Vanity Fair. That Vanity Fair
Vanity.
article made me laugh so hard because, like, Bresnikan had to specify specifically, super specific, like, Kathleen Kennedy will still remain president of Lucasfilm. Like, yes, I don't know, everyone has such weird desires to get rid of her. Not everyone. There's a certain sect of people that do. And I never understood that because she literally has made probably the greatest films of all time, number 1, and especially childhood, like, really, really deep, impactful, like,
Mhm, mhm.
um, I guess you could say, the formation of people's personalities. Like, I don't know, she is so much to do with those huge flicks
Mhm.
and I guess cinema changing movies that when the second they want, Dave to take over, I don't think anyone realizes Dave has a lot under his belt, but it's
That's not his job,
not his job, you
and
know
he
what I
would
mean?
be
Like,
terrible at it. Let's be honest.
yeah, like, imagine Dave being a president of a
No.
company and be like, "Well, you never know," and it's
Oh,
like,
yeah. Interesting. Interesting.
you
Interesting.
can't give answers like that, you've gotta be an executive, you gotta answer to really, really, I guess, wealthy and important people in the business, and, as much as people want Dave to usurp Kathleen Kennedy, he's not that type.
No,
He's not.
the whole Kathy Kennedy thing is just boring at this point
It
because I
is.
mean, and to your point, like, yeah, she has done all those things, but the reason she hasn't gotten the praise that she rightfully deserves is because she's been a woman in the background.
Exactly, exactly.
It's always been this boys' club of Frank Marshall and George
Uh-huh.
Lucas
Mhm.
and Steven
Spielberg.
Spielberg and like all those guys, and you see the men, right? The Mavericks. You don't see like
Yes.
that she's just as much a part of it as
Yeah.
they were, but because she's a woman and she's in the background and she started as Steven's secretary, like no one gave two flying fucks about her until she
Makes no
becomes
sense.
the face of Lucasfilm, and then all of a sudden it's like and society has an internalized misogyny against
Oh,
eh,
of course.
especially against powerful women, not just
Mhm.
women, but especially powerful women, and especially powerful women that like are now spearheading the thing that made you who you are to an extent
And
because
it
it's your childhood. It's like,
and
come on,
it's
remember the South Park episode about George Lucas? We're not gonna use that word here,
no.
but he did something to your childhood when he did the prequels or Indiana Jones.
And then
It's
now
just
and then now they're like, "She's doing that to my kid's childhood," and you're like, How? Like,
but then pretending that they didn't say the exact same thing about
same about
George,
George.
but
Yeah,
multiplying that anger by
and
an
look,
ungodly amount of
I'm
times.
telling you, if Dave became president in any capacity, those kind of people will find a way to hate him, you know?
Some already do.
And some already do. And like, like I told you, like I said earlier, Ahsoka was in a female-led show. At like
Mhm.
women of diversity too. You had a black woman as the lead. Okay. You had someone who is like you just have all of these opportunities to find a way to like dislike him or like him, but he knows what he's doing. He's brilliant. And like he's brilliant in the sense of story, but I don't know if I would want him to lead a company. Like I and he does have now, I believe what is the exact title, Gus? I don't remember.
CEO,
Chief
CCO, Chief Creative Officer.
Okay. That means things pass across his desk and he can look at it and give his input. It doesn't mean he's gonna veto things or he's going to approve things. You know what I mean? I guess that's the big struggle is like that's the same title as Kevin Feige, right?
Mhm. But Kevin Feige is also president of
President.
Marvel,
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
he double dips.
Yes. I just I don't know what people expect with this announcement. It might mean there might be some more cohesive storytelling, maybe some more really cool thematic parallels that we didn't expect to get between Andor and future releases of shows or what have you. Half of these things are already in the books. But Carrie Beck is also someone who has
Mhm.
also got a promotion. And she's been primarily in charge of a lot of story stuff too. Everything from Bad Batch to Rebels and well into the book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian. So like and Ahsoka, like I don't know. It everyone's excited about Dave, and don't get me wrong, I am too. But it's more than just Dave. This
Mhm.
article
Mhm.
says that as much too. And yeah, I don't know. I love Dave Filoni, and I'm very happy that he's gotten this promotion. And I think there's a lot we can dissect from it. I just think it's also important to acknowledge that Carrie Beck got it as well.
Yeah.
She got moved up. She's great.
Let's dissect something here because one of the things that you mentioned that the article also mentions that they're one of the reasons that these roles have been established, right, is to kind
Mhm.
of maintain. I don't know if cohesion is actually the right word because
Um,
or consistency either because I think that's the concern or fear or uh, what word have you that a lot of us, myself included, kind of have with this whole day things that like it might maybe not in the beginning, but it might kind of standardize a little bit the
mhm.
Star Wars tone. And
Sure.
right now, I think one of the strengths that it has is the diversity.
Yeah.
Do you feel that Star Wars is too tonally diverse? Do you feel like there's a problem with what happened with the sequels? What's going on with Disney Plus? Where do you think like Star Wars is right now landing for you that Dave kind of needs to come in to? I don't want to say right ship, but put some band-aids on it, if that makes sense.
I love that you bring this up because I what I pictured as you were, saying that is that image of George and every BTS, I guess, videos from the Clone Wars. It's him talking about, what Star Wars is and the mythology of it and how to tell a story in the Star Wars universe. I picture Dave doing that for other creators.
Hmm.
I know Carrie Beck's job is to go and find diverse and unique creators for the Star Wars universe. And I guess people that might be more consistent than what we've gotten, Benioff and Wise, the the other creators that have, definitely Patty Jenkins been cutting ties with. I think that's Carrie Beck's role. But
Spicy.
with yes, the tonal differences, dude. Like I've said it publicly before. I thought Andor was great. There's just it was to me the more of the downer show
Hmm.
compared to a show like Ahsoka or Mandalorian. And I could tell you some of these shows aren't for everyone. Like my wife does not like Andor. She didn't like how it
Hmm.
made her feel, but she'll wake up at 5 in the morning with me back when they released that early and watch Mandalorian. Like in a heartbeat, no questions asked. So all that being said, yes, I do like the tonal diversity that we have now. With Dave being in this new position, will it stay the same? I hope so. I think it will. I don't think Dave's going to directly interfere with the story someone wants to tell. But if Dave, in some capacity, sees something that could be cohesively tied together, both like truly timeline wise or like just thematically tied together, and like George says with poetry and rhymes, like I think Dave could really pull that off.
Mhm.
more so than most other people. Because it's true, like, you've seen interviews with Favreau and Filoni, and, like, every time Favreau has an idea, Dave is like, "Well, you could do this, and you
Mhm.
could include this character because this character does exist." Like, I'm I thought one of the coolest things we ever got in Star Wars live action was that we got Cobb Vanth on screen, and that
Oh
was
yeah. Oh yeah.
straight up from the suggestion of the story group and Dave. So, like, that's kinda how you do it, or Chrysanthemum, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? I
Mhm.
know Fabs probably just wanted a cool bounty hunter. It's like, "Oh, we can take this 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 really awesome looking Wookiee that's got a scar across his face and put him on the show." So, like, if we can have more moments like that, and I'm sure people have their opinions on cameos, but when it's only a cameo when it doesn't serve the plot of the story.
Right. Right. Right.
And
Mhm.
I think if you can tie more Star Wars together and give people those payoffs, I mean, that within itself to me is an incredible thing. And Dave has proved that he could do that endlessly. The best example most recently was when 3PO was in Ahsoka. And it
Mhm.
was done so well because you probably wouldn't wanna have Carrie on screen. You probably couldn't do her justice, and to have 3PO do it made me tear up because, like, this is the perfect way to tie in Leia without tying in Leia. So, I don't
Mhm.
know, that he has that it factor that most people, would probably overlook, and I'm yeah, tonally I'm still begging for diversity. I think
Mhm.
Acolyte and Skeleton Crew are gonna be very different stories. The same with Andor season 2 and whatever else we get on the pipeline, Vision season 3 or whatever, Bad Batch season 3. I think everything should have their own tonal difference, and if they could tie together a little bit tighter, I'm not gonna lie, I'd be pretty down for it. I would be. And I'm not
I
talking post credits, dude. I'm
Oh yeah.
talking like story wise. Like, this is a new era. Can we do this with this new era? I don't know.
I just imagine, and I hope it happens, and I would want to be a fly in the wall during that meeting. And I mean, it's not going to happen anymore because we know Andor season 2 is basically almost wrapped. I
Yeah.
think they only have like a couple more days with
Mhm.
actors once they start filming again. Eh, so unfortunately, no more Andor. But I would have
Yeah.
given any limb to have been a fly on the wall to see Tony Gilroy talk with Dave Filoni.
Oh, and,
That would have
I
been the most awkward conversation in the history of Star Wars,
dude,
because
it
Tony
might
Gilroy
happen
doesn't
still.
understand doesn't
No.
understand Filoni, and Filoni doesn't get Gilroy,
Nope.
and Gilroy is an immovable object, and, and an unstoppable force, I guess. So,
Yeah.
like, I would love to see how that would even happen. How does Dave Filoni talk Star Wars
Yeah.
to Tony Gilroy?
Yeah, exactly, and I think one of our friends put out a tweet. God, it might have been Jerry. Someone put a tweet like, "Imagine," or maybe Alden, imagine Tony Gilroy imagine Dave explaining to Tony Gilroy what the World Between World is, and I'm like, "Jesus Christ," like, that is so hilarious because he doesn't seem like that type of creator, and that's okay because everyone has a different
Mhm,
voice
mhm.
and different opinion on those things. But I think it would be cool to get some more, not World Between Worlds and Andor, but some sort of interesting tie-ins that could potentially be, figured out throughout the series or any show that releases, or movie.
'Cause at least to me, like, in my mind, I think that there's like the force, right? There's a measure of balance with everything, and I
Mhm.
do think that there's a way to bring in diverse creators to do diverse
Yeah.
stories that still fit within the framework of Star Wars and the fabric of Star Wars. But I also think that probably too much is too much,
Yeah.
because I'll be upfront, right? I've never been too thrilled about the Taika Waititi
Sure.
hiring
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
film, especially. I mean, I know that you can't really take Taika seriously when he's in interviews because he's just
Mhm.
trolling everybody,
Yeah.
but in the way that he talks about some things sometimes, especially like the couple of things that I read about him and with the MCU and things like that, I'm just like, and I don't want to sound like those internet bros that's just like, oh well, you have to take Star Wars seriously, because I mean there is a amount of irreverence that you can have with the
Of
source
course.
material, but to an extent, you also don't want someone to just come in and do something that's
Yeah.
so uh,
Polarizing.
polarizing or
Yeah.
irreverent that's just like doesn't even fit anymore with
It's
where
sacred. It's sacred. And,
well, but we have to be iconoclast sometimes, and we have to
Mhm.
desecrate the holy to
Yeah.
to find new flavors within the thing. And I think that's what kind of Andor did to an
Mhm.
extent. It's just like it's giving
Yeah.
us completely different flavor of Star Wars, but like how much till too much sweetness, it gives you cavities, How do
Yeah.
you feel about that? Like just bringing in like creators that are like way too out there. Is there such a
Man,
thing as too out there?
I you gotta think who made it. George
Mhm.
Lucas, and, like, I had told you this earlier, I'm working on a really comprehensive video essay about midichlorians and, like, obsessive, and I use that book as a reference, because there's a lot of cool stuff in that book, but all that being said, this creator was pretty wild. I mean,
Mm,
the guy who made all this had really intense, deep thoughts about biology, but also about war and what war looks like. And even his sequel trilogy, from what we know, is also going to be very, very strange. And yeah, give me some more diverse creators. I'm not talking like there is, Tony Gilroy. There is a really cool thing he's doing with Andor, and I will never knock that. It's kind of got this like Christopher Nolan feel of like The Dark Knight took
mhm,
Batman to a much more serious level. That's kind of what we're getting right now with Andor, and that's awesome, and I love it. It makes me happy. But like, I'm all about whimsy. I'm all about, things
mhm.
that are also silly because they need to be silly. And yeah, I'm Taika's an interesting one. That was announced like almost 3 years, maybe 4 years ago soon. But like we've known about that one in the works, and we haven't really heard much from that project since. And yeah, like who else could you bring into this? Who else like the TV shows have been a really good way of tying in these new directors, Famuyiwa, Steph Green. You've got these awesome directors that are having the opportunities, Bryce Dallas Howard, to do these projects that are much more short form. But uh, that should be the testing ground if I'm gonna be honest
Yeah,
with
those
you.
that's what I was gonna say.
That
Those
then
might be auditions,
yeah,
basically.
exactly, and then you give them, a feature film, like Dave now is a feature film. Mangold had to do Indiana Jones to kind of figure out maybe what way he can do with, his new biblical epic apparently. So, yeah, I mean, if I were to cite people in particular, I mean, one of the biggest risks they ever took was Ryan Johnson, having only a handful of films under his belt, and now with the success of Knives Out and Poker
Paid off in
Face, like,
spades.
oh my god, yeah. So, like, there's just so many cool things to focus on, and like we know that Guillermo del Toro almost had a film. Like I don't know, you yes, more diverse creators, maybe even younger creators, like not people our age. I mean, maybe people our age. Shit, I don't know. There's not really anyone super famous right now that is our age doing this kind of stuff, but like it would be cool to hear from someone in our generation's opinion on certain things, and we'll get there. We'll get there. All that being said, though, yes, I think there should be a diverse tone into what people are making and diverse creators, but there is an underlying fact that like there still should be reverence for
Mm.
this show and what this whole saga means because as much as I love Marvel movies and I will never try to bash them in this way, some of those movies miss that tone. Even the earlier films miss the tone of what we had, and there've been a lot of good consistencies. For example, Guardians has been the most consistent of any set of those movies because
Mhm.
they have this similar tone and feeling of family and love that you get from every movie. And I want nothing more than to have a creator like that, and Dave and other people to kind of steer that ship because it definitely needs to be steered.
I wanna ask you something.
I love you.
Obviously, piggying back on like all of this, and you saying like we've been talking about the Beatles, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna use the Beatles as a springboard. Steve Jobs once said, and obviously I'm paraphrasing this completely, so I'm not even gonna try to do the quote itself, just the
Yeah.
spirit of it. But Steve Jobs once upon a said had said that his business model is based on the Beatles because they were four very different guys that came together to challenge each other to do something that was greater than the sum of all of them, right?
Mhm.
And I think that because we've been talking about the record and the
Yeah.
Beatles and like how all these creators are coming together to do all these narrative stories that we're so impassioned about. I feel the key with this comparison is that they challenge each other, right? Like Paul
Yeah.
challenged John, John challenged Paul, and like George wanted to challenge them, and like everything that happened within them and Ringo. So there's like a lot of things, like all these creators going together and butting heads sometimes, which is
Mhm.
important to create art. And I think
Mhm.
that now to compare that with George Lucas, for example, George Lucas original trilogy, and this is where it's gonna get spicy. So I wanna see how you
I'm
react
gonna
to
take
this.
my Tums right now
I wanna
just
say,
so my stomach doesn't get
no,
upset.
not too many, too much calcium. Uh, I want to see how you react to this because I know you're a fan of one of the people that I'm gonna
Here we
mention.
go. Here we go.
In the original trilogy, George had Gary Kurtz and Larry Kasdan to
Hmm.
kind of push back and be, challenge a lot of the things that George would have done
Yeah.
to, and even Marshall Lucas too, right? To better the films. Marshall through the
Mhm.
edit, Gary through a lot of like wanting to insert final scenes in Empire Strikes Back, and Larry
Yeah.
Kasdan suggesting all the things that he suggested, so on
Yes.
and so forth. And Irving Kershner too, like making Harrison Ford ad lib in Empire.
Hmm.
There was a lot of things that were outside of George's control
Hmm.
that pushed the films to be better than what they
Of
might
course.
have been or could have been if George had just gotten his way.
Hmm.
And that started being diluted a little bit with Return of the Jedi when
Of
Gary
course.
leaves and it's just Richard Marquand being a
Uh-huh.
ghost director, right?
Of course.
Uh, Fast forward to the prequels, George doesn't have like someone writing the screenplays. It's just him doing
Mhm.
story treatments and the writing. I think he did have someone help him write an Attack of the
For
Clones.
Revenge of the Sith and Attack of the Clones, yes, but
And
Phantom
Carrie
Menace
and
was
Carrie was
actually him.
a
Yeah.
ghostwriter to a
Uh-huh.
script doctor, sorry.
Uh-huh.
But as opposed to Gary Kurtz, he had like Rick McCallum,
Mhm. Who was a yes man.
who
And
is a
and
yes
and
man.
and it's funny you say that. Keep going. I'm sorry. Well, you can talk about Rick in 5 seconds.
So like, and we see that Rick didn't challenge George; he just
Mm-mm.
facilitated his vision, which
Yes.
is which is totally legitimate uh, way to also enable a
Yes.
creator to fulfill their vision.
Mhm.
Um, so to lesser or greater extent. That's up to
Yeah.
us as
Whoever watches it.
the people that are
Mhm.
watching that art now to judge for ourselves. So I'm wondering. Well, first, how do you feel about that before I move into the next thing? How do you
Look,
feel?
I love that you bring it up because I'm a big behind the scenes guy.
Hmm.
I've pride myself on that. I've watched every commentary from the cast and the crew, on any streaming site on Blu-rays. I love behind the scenes. But I agree there was an aspect of the original trilogy that feels a bit more refined, that feels a bit more like a big budget 80s movie where like no we have to be able to cut corners here and do this scene here and do things this way. And George, I think at that point in his career creatively, he needed a lot of input and he wanted to just own what he had. And unfortunately, and you know this, it wasn't a privately financed endeavor.
Hmm. Hmm.
Empire was a little bit, but he still had to go through Fox. So was Return of the Jedi a little bit. He has still had to go through Fox. The only thing that George needed Fox for in the prequels was distribution,
Hmm.
because George had made ILM, he had made Pixar, he had made the Edit Droid, he had made all these humongous companies that he then put out to other creators for other studios to finance and pay for, and George was just making money.
He
And
could he
so
could put his kids through
he could,
college.
yes. Oh my god, yeah. And so like you 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 have this idea of he gets the prequels and now no one's gonna tell him no. And guys, I agree with you, dude. Like, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. The good thing is that it's purely George Lucas. And like I will go as far as saying that's why I like the Phantom Menace the most because it is the weirdest,
Hmm. Hmm. I agree.
but
It's the best and the best
but
looking one, I think, I meant,
it
right?
is, I agree, it is one of the most gorgeous Star Wars films, but you can tell it's coming from a place of sincerity. I mean, it is a genuine, like, no filter. The second that movie came out, fans had opinions on midichlorians, on Jar Jar, on the politics. And with Attack of the Clones, you can see that, or young Anakin, there was some refinement that had to happen, and he had to do some reflection on what's a better story to tell. And, you know, I I love the prequels. I do sometimes look at them through rose-colored lenses, I think a lot of us do because we grew up with them, but you can't say that the subtext of what George was doing and saying wasn't there. It was there the entire time.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
like they are truly, and this is nothing against the sequel trilogy or even the original trilogy. The most cohesive trilogy is the prequels. I don't know if there'll ever be another one as
Hmm.
perfectly cohesive. I mean, there may be like two or three hiccups. Cypher DS is one of them. But like,
Hey, they explained that in the Clone Wars.
yeah, exactly. They explained it. It's already been no, but like I agree with you. I think I know where you're leading with this, but I'll let you go. I just know that yes, there should be some capacity of like maybe you shouldn't go that far because even George admits it. You watch
Maybe I
the
went too far
beginning,
with this, and he's the one
yeah, and
takes those.
he's like, I mean, he one of my favorite lines is if a regular person watches, they're gonna go nuts. That's one of his lines, and I'm like, that is just yeah, because sometimes whenever you have too much creative responsibility, things do get messy for a viewer and a creator. That's part of
Uh,
it.
George Lucas, low key, one of the funniest people on earth.
Oh, he's
Let's be
amazingly
real. Let's
funny.
be real. But to no one's surprise, the point that I'm trying to make with this
Mhm.
is history repeating itself to an extent with Filoni. And the reason I say that is because we know Filoni has given us the goods in the
Yeah.
past, particularly. Let's focus on Clone Wars and Rebels.
Mhm.
And while he gets the praise for those shows,
Mhm.
it's extremely important to say that those shows weren't created in a vacuum. He
No.
wasn't the only director. He wasn't the only writer. It was a very collaborative effort with many other directors in a writer's room where, yeah, a lot of the ideas were his, and he's the driving force of those series. But I think those stories of his are strengthened and become better because of like all this group of people that he bounced ideas with or
Mhm.
fleshed out stories or directed episodes, etc., etc. And right now with Ahsoka, this is the first time we get to see like Filoni by himself.
Yeah.
You're writing everything, and I personally I could feel it
Me too.
because there was, I think, kind of similar to George again. I feel like dialogue. This is the problem with the nerds. We don't interact with people that much, so we don't really know how humans interact in the real world.
Yeah,
George's writing in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith was a little clunky, and I
it
feel
was,
that
yeah.
Filoni's writing of some of these scenes were also a little clunky in Ahsoka.
Mhm.
Some of the story beats, I feel, especially like all the fantasy Lord of the Rings things,
Mhm.
which I love. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like I love the Lord of the.
I could
There it
say
is.
I was gonna say I
I
could
love
tell.
there we go. We got the Lord of the Rings right there. So
Right there.
I love it. But it was funny because I was talking to some friends while Ahsoka was coming out, and
Mhm.
we were just like making fun of it, but in a fun, in a joyful way, not in a
Yeah.
I look at him. But it was just
Mhm.
like, come on, Dave, like everyone can tell you read Lord of the Rings,
Of course.
and don't tell us you like it because we'll believe you,
Uh-huh.
type of thing. And and now I wonder, like now Dave is like being unfettered, right,
Mhm.
without having restriction, where
Mhm.
he's like he needs to be kind of like, hey, buddy, I know you're a CCO, but
Mhm.
pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah,
Have and maybe that's one of the good things that'll come out of the well. There's a lot of good things of the WGA winning the strike,
of
obviously,
course.
but one of them is having to have writers uh,
Yes.
rooms like for all of these shows. Do you think that Dave kind of needs to let go a little bit of those reins and bring back some collaborators to help him flesh out his stories again, or do you think that Ahsoka proves that he can stand on his own?
I wouldn't be surprised if he has the opportunity to talk with George a lot. You know, we know at one point George was supposed to almost have Dave's role as a consultant,
Mhm.
on the sequel trilogy and other stories that were going to be told. And, George said the only request he had is if he sells the company, they make a solo movie. And like the reason I bring that up is because Dave and George particularly had the opportunity to sit in on a lot of those writing rooms, even Robot Chicken's writing room. I know that because I talked to
Mhm.
Seth Green, and he said that, and George had a great insight on humor. And yeah, like I do think it's important that Dave does help with the cohesive nature of this ultimate saga, but I also do think it's important, like that could possibly hinder a sort of difference in how to tell a story. I would love a story that's non-linear. Everything in Star Wars has been super linear.
Mhm.
There's always a beginning, a middle, and an end. But I would love a story that's in the idea of almost Quentin Tarantino, where it can,
Memento in Star
yes, oh,
Wars.
exactly, or start somewhere and end somewhere that none of us would have ever expected. And like, yeah, give us that. Am I afraid Dave could hinder that possibility? Maybe. I just don't know what it's like to be in that room. I could tell you what it's like to collaborate with people. I'm a teacher. I watch I watch kids do it all the time, man. And like sometimes it's one of the most beautiful things you witness. Other times you've got people or kids walking up to your desk in tears, like I can't work with this person. We don't work well together. And you're like,
Mhm.
shit, that's real. That's a real freaking life, man.
Yep.
And if you don't think kids or people notice that, we could be 3 years on the line and say, damn, all these shows are the same,
Mhm.
and that's not good. Or we could say none of these shows are connecting. That's not good. Right now, we're in a cool spot where I think for the most part, everything already is kind of cohesive. So I don't know how much more Dave is going to be able to bring to the table unless it's some really cool aspect of more cohesiveness. I don't know. I'd have no idea. I want nothing more than for Dave to have the opportunity to tell his own story and help guide people and
Mhm.
shepherd people, into really interesting ways to tell a story or in different aspects of the universe. Like if they want to have a scene take place on a lava planet, like be cool. They just do Mustafar. We've
Mhm.
got this on it. You know what I mean? Like, uh, I want more things like that, but I don't know. I don't know if him being in charge of every story is necessarily a good thing, uh, or having his own opinion on every story is necessarily a good thing. Because it'd be bad. George had the Fabuloso button, and he would hit the concept art with it. Like,
Yep.
there may be times where Dave does that, and then he does the other one where the thumbs down or whatever, or just needs work. Like I don't want him to hinder someone's ability to make and write a story just because it might not fit his overall vision of the saga. And that's why you have people like Carrie Beck and Kathleen Kennedy, and you have people that are hopefully going to collaborate in this. And yes, it would be cool to see Dave at the head of a table saying, you should do this. We'll think about it this way, challenging other creators. Because George was that for him. And that to me is some of the best footage to watch on the internet is just watching George guide them through processes and beats. And the one thing that George always did, why can't we do that?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think that's an interesting way to put it because I think yeah, if Dave acts more like an uncle or a grandparent, I think it will thrive because he'll be like,
Yes.
I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not your dad.
No, no.
But this because if he comes in like a dad, I think that might not be the
Yeah, I
best
agree.
idea because I will say that and you mentioned this. I don't think that there's tonal dissonance with
Mhm.
all the Disney Plus Star Wars things
Yeah.
that are out. I think the problem that the shows have been having is that they've been rushed. Let's
Oh,
be
I agree.
they've been rushed and they haven't had the time to like especially Book of Boba Fett. As much as I like that show, I feel like it was a show that could have been in the oven
Mhm.
sometime.
It's a little bit longer.
And it's interestingly a similar yet different problem that Marvel's having right now as well. Where it's just like
Mhm.
let's just pump out content.
Mhm.
And a lot of the stuff that Marvel has been pumping out, it's good. Like I love She Hulk,
Mhm.
I love Moon Knight, but like a lot of the times, it's just like, are you just pumping out content for the sake of having content,
Yeah.
or are you just like, let's make sure that when we put something out, that it's the right, the right
Exactly.
amount of episodes, or the right story, or that we've got this figured out and we know where we're going with the not necessarily that that the story's going to connect to that, which will lead to something else. Because I don't think Star Wars needs to be or should be like the MCU in that regard,
Mhm.
but I feel that it plays to Star Wars strengths to take your time
Mhm.
because something that I've always said about Star Wars and I will hold steadfast to it is that Star Wars thrives in absence. Like
Dude, oh my god, I love it you said that. Do you remember how incredible it was to watch The Force Awakens, like, come out? It was
it,
so meticulous.
yes, the only mistake I made was to watch it with normies.
They
That
same,
was the
and
only
people did not,
problem.
dude. I think with the way the share experience because that theater experience was horrible. But all that being because they all had their
I was
awful
all
opinions.
excited and then everyone's
Yeah,
just like, I was like,
dude,
what?
same. Okay, we have to talk about that later. But I can tell you this much: like when the Force Awakens was releasing, and the only things they had in the works were TFA, Rogue One, and TLJ for the most part.
Mhm.
Like you felt that there was so much precision in the Force Awakens,
Yep.
and then let's fast forward at about 6 years, and there is a little bit of messiness in some of these seasons of the new show, like Book of Boba Fett. Like there's some things I'm like, ooh, that really could have, like you said, been in the oven a little bit longer. But like I I long for a time where things are a little bit more meticulous, a
Mhm.
little bit more precise, a little bit more intentional. because the second creators back
Like, make
in
me wait, make me wait.
yeah, make me wait, dude. Like I like even like I said, there is an anxiousness right now for me personally because I don't know when the next thing's going to release.
Mhm.
But if they told me Acolyte or Skeleton Crew is not going to release till May, I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Breathe a little bit, do some editing.
Because those were one of the things that 2015 when Force Awakens comes out,
Hmm.
I was like, and then they announced that it's gonna be a Star Wars movie every year. Like then I wasn't podcasting, then I wasn't as plugged in
Yeah, of
to the
course.
whole thing as I am now. But even then, I'm just like, that's not. I don't know if that's the right idea because the original
Yeah,
trilogy was 3 years in between movies. The prequels were 3 years in
3
between
years.
movies. So you have like that time to get amped up and not
Of
have it for a
course.
while. So you're like, ah, damn, it's Star Wars is special
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's this event. And when they were like, it's every year, I was like, it's not special then, because then
Ooh,
you don't have to wait. It's just like, oh, it's this thing, and like Star Wars is not like Marvel, where the Marvel can pump out 2 movies or 3 movies a year, and
yeah.
because it's different heroes and different stuff, like technically it still works, but it's again, and I think it's one of the questions that I wrote down here for you. It's a different beast, and right now in the 2010s, 2020s, like the media landscape is completely different from
Way
what it was in
different,
the early 2000s when the
dude.
prequels came out. So, and this kind of leads into like the future, right, of Star Wars films. Like, what do you think is Star Wars now? Like, is Star Wars like heyday dead? Is it now
Uh,
destined for streaming? Is what does Star Wars mean for us right now? Is it is it dead? Is it just like this pop culture icon that just lives in consciousness as opposed to in cinemas?
See, that's the thing that I'm worried about because there is, in all honesty, a fatigue, and everyone tells you the fatigue of this. Like, that's a real thing. And people maybe say it passingly and say that it doesn't exist. But this is my example. I want to see the Marvels. I
Mhm,
have no drive to actually go to the theater and want to go see it right
mhm,
now. And I couldn't tell you why. I don't know if it's because it's not something I've been the most hyped for, if the reviews haven't been great, but everything I've heard, and this is kind of the sad part, is the post-credit scene. Everyone's excited because of the post-credit scene, and I'm
mhm.
like, and I don't know what it is, but all I'm saying is, if that's the thing that you're going to the theaters for, why go to the theaters at all? If you're
Right,
just excited for the next project and you can't take a moment to enjoy what we currently have, or if the current project is setting up the next project, then you're doing it wrong. You know
right,
what I
right.
mean? Like you when you would watch the prequels, you knew there was a movie coming, but you had to wait 3 years. Uh, I didn't experience the OT, but I could tell you this much: when The Force Awakens came out, I was excited to get Rogue One,
Mhm, mhm.
but it was also kind of a pain in the ass to sit next to my mom, have her go, "Well, where's Ray at?" And like, dude, I mean, I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
you probably had those same exact
For
conversations.
me, it happened with Solo when Darth
Or
Maul shows up. I'm
dude,
with my
in
dad, and my dad's
Solo,
like, "Hey, hey, 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 isn't he
my
dead?"
my wife was like, "Wait, what the hell?" I'm like, "This is so insane that they're doing this." But
Mhm,
all that being said, I'm not saying there's a fatigue to Star Wars, but I think to other people that aren't as plugged in as you and I are, and all of our peers, that maybe there is a sense of what there's, and this is not a crazy, this is a not a fake number. We recently ranked every episode of live action TV.
mhm, mhm,
57 episodes of live action TV, and it's only been around for 4 years.
mhm.
Like this month. Just consider that. So, like, if there's a fan that wants to get caught up that maybe hasn't watched anything since The Rise of Skywalker, they've got a lot to digest in terms of live action. That's not even mentioning Bad Batch or Clone Wars or Rebels or Visions
Mhm,
or any of it. So I just think, to me personally, I think there should be some brevity to these releases
mhm.
and some brevity to maybe the next set of stories. Like if we get, Acolyte and or season 2 and Skeleton Crew, like, not even gonna lie to you, give us like 2 years before the next Disney Plus show. That'd be awesome. I would
I don't
love that.
disagree. I don't
And
disagree at
give
all.
us a movie and then give us a couple more years so they can build up what they want to do with that era of Star Wars. I don't know. I'm I
I
love
mean,
that you asked that. I
I
really
mean, I
do.
think it would be cool if, like, they alternate because I feel like right now I mean, I know we have Bad Batch season 3 coming down the
Of
pipeline,
course.
and there's supposed to be a Tales of the Jedi coming, but
Mhm.
Tales of the Jedi barely count because it's just mini episodes.
It's
So
short,
it's not like
brief.
a
Mhm.
full season like Bad Batch
Yeah.
will be. But I feel like they need to double down a little bit more on animation as well, because I think
Yeah.
that would be a really interesting paradigm to be
Uh-huh.
like, okay, one live action show, one animated show, and kind
Yes.
of take your time in between it so that
Give us
every
some
time
space.
one comes back, you're
Well,
anticipating.
there isn't it isn't like there's not books and stuff coming out as well, or
Mhm.
video games. There's so much supplemental material besides things you can watch. There's things you can read, there's things you can listen to, there's things you can interact with and directly play. Like, they haven't even stopped that aspect of it. Like, it would be cool to give us a year where maybe they focus more on video games, or a year where they focus more on books or animation. I agree. I would love that.
Because
Eh
I think that's the strength of that is that for
Mhm,
the nerds, for us,
mhm.
we keep being fed.
Yes.
But for the normies, yeah, you make them wait, so they're a little hungry, so they're not like saturated. So
They think Star Wars is gone.
there's a bigger gap for them because
Mhm.
let's face it, the normies are not reading the books, they're not reading the comics, they're
Mm-mm.
not playing. Well, some are playing the video games, but for the most part, they're consuming the movies, the live
Yes.
action TV shows,
Mhm.
and then the animation stuff.
It
So spacing it out a lot, I think is gonna help
but
make everyone hungry.
I wanna say one thing too, because I think it's important to address. If indeed the next film is 2025, and let's say it's a December of 2025 release, we're looking at 6 years between The Rise of Skywalker
Love it.
and the next project. Great, I love it. But if that next project is all about the shows you need to get caught up on,
Mistake.
there you go. So, like, you have to consider your audience. You have to consider who's going to be sitting in that theater. Is it going to be me and my wife who watch every show? Or is it going to be me and my dad who's only watched Mando season 1 and 2 and now hasn't seen Ahsoka or season 3 or Book of Boba Fett? And so when he
Mhm,
sits down to
mhm.
watch it and he no longer has the dark saber, but Bo-Katan has it. No, actually, no, it's been destroyed. But she's the leader of Mandalore,
Right.
and Boba Fett now is this king of
The
this
daimyo. He's a
cons-
daimyo. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then you've got Ahsoka who's on a different guy. Like, these people would be like, "What? This is just where did this come from?" So, like,
They
you
could put a
know,
little recap video in the
uh,
beginning of the movie, like they did in
yeah,
Obi Wan,
but by God, like,
without the skip button, obviously.
ex- I just there's a lot to be excited for, but there's also a little bit to be weary about in that context. And I love more Star Wars. If they announced that Skeleton Crew every episode drops on Friday, I'm literally going to New York for a Kiss show. I probably would be like, sorry, dude, I'm gonna have to sit in the hotel for 8 hours and digest this shit because I have to. But like, I mean, I wouldn't want that, you know?
Hmm.
I do want space, I do want brevity. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a
And
difficult thing to talk about.
I'm glad you brought up the films because that's kind of like the last leg
Bridge. Yeah.
of this is Filoni, as we know, is directing one of the three films that are coming out.
Mhm.
Uh, how do you feel about those three films that have been announced? Are you excited for all three of them? Is there one that you're least excited for? Like, because I have my opinions and I'll tell you what I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
afterwards. And if it were up to you, what order would you release them in?
You know, God, I love you. I love this show. But I mean, if this is your first episode, don't make it your last. Okay. So that being said, no. In all seriousness, though, I've I'm on the Filoni train. It'd be cool for him to be the 2027. I don't know if there's a certain date. Really, has there been a date? I know
No.
2025. Okay, so let's say they do it every 2 years. So
And anyway, if there was, it's
yeah,
all out the window
of
because of
course,
all the
the
strikes.
writing, yeah, all of it, all the strikes. So my ideal world would be to get Dave's stuff last, like, out of
Mhm,
all of them, only because it'll allow him time to cook and simmer and think about what he can do. Is this the final story of Mando, Grogu, Ahsoka? Like, do you make it that big? Do
mhm,
you work some things into it to where it's kind of smaller? Um, I believe the Ray story has potential to be first
mhm,
because, what a cooler way to get people back in the seats, even if it isn't 2025, it's 2026, like 7 years between that and Trolls would be so
mhm.
cool. You know what I mean? Because then, I
Give
think
her
just,
some High Republic robes.
oh my God, dude, like,
Dress her in gold.
I'm telling you, like, you could do so much more cohesive storytelling if you just give it a couple of years and see where certain stories are going and tie in like whatever or she said in an interview that the story surprised her, didn't expect it to go that way, and I'm like, man, like
I mean, but that see that for me is a nothing burger of an article
I
because
also agree.
that could be interpreted any way. Because if I
Hmm.
like, let's assume that that was Emilia Clarke talking about the final season of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took her by surprise. She didn't expect
Woo.
it to go that way, and then
Uh-huh.
look at what we got. So
Yeah,
I don't put stock too much in that because it's just like it's so far away that it could
of
still
course.
change. So it's like
See, the project I'm most excited for is Mangolds because I really
mm,
did love Dial of Destiny, and
same.
the thing that everyone needs to consider with Dial of Destiny is you're working with a single character who is the backbone of the franchise. Really, let's be real, and he is so beloved that whatever you do will make someone in some capacity upset. But if we are going
Mhm,
to get the idea of the origins of the Force, uh, Mangold has had to work with a lot of legacy characters. Wolverine, right?
mhm,
He had to
mhm,
work with real life people in Ford v Ferrari, and he also had to work with, like I said, Indiana Jones. Like that's like you don't get more iconic. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Like not even Luke Skywalker is as iconic as Indiana Jones because Indiana Jones had 5 movies now just about him. So
mhm,
and his family and his dad. So like Mangold getting the opportunity to tell a unique individual story about maybe the biggest character in Star Wars, the Force, is I mean, dude, if they could I've said it before. If they can like bridge the gap between midichlorians or bridge the gap between the living and the cosmic force, or give us the origin of the force priestesses, from
mhm,
those episodes of Clone Wars, or even explain the origin of force goats or how a lightsaber was like if he could do that well, and the problem with that story too is now you've got backstory, way deeper backstory, way more than George even did, that sets up the things that happen in the future. So, if I'm gonna be real, that's the one I'm most just deeply excited for, and honestly, the one that could probably disappoint us the most because he might
hmm,
not get it, but I think he will.
hmm.
I think he will. I think if Dave is involved, I think he will. I think he'll expose him to some things. I don't know.
See, I disagree on that point.
Yeah,
On Mangold being the one to disappoint us the most,
I
because
just don't. No,
honestly,
no, I don't
I
think
don't
it
think so
will,
because
but
it has the
I think
one
it
that has the
could.
least to lose.
That's also true because there is no legacy to it. You're right. That's
Exactly.
fair. That's
That's
interesting.
why I think,
Man,
and the one that I'm least excited for is Filoni's because
wow.
there's I think that movie has a lot going against
Yeah.
it. There's the baggage of all the EU fandom
Mhm.
that's gonna come into it, being
Ooh.
expecting Heir to the Empire.
Yeah.
There's gonna be like
Beast Lamari.
all the sequel trilogy haters, all the prequel. But like, there's like I think the Filoni movie is more welcoming of so
Mm.
many landscapes of the Star Wars
Yeah,
fandom and environment that it has a lot going against it.
it
And I
does.
think that what you were saying, like it's a movie that you need homework for, and not in the sense that Avengers Endgame needed homework, because to an extent, if you watched Infinity War, you were good with Endgame.
Oh, of
Yeah,
course.
obviously you didn't get like all the fucking backstory from all the
Captain
superheroes
Marvel.
or
Yeah.
anything, but I think Infinity War did a pretty good job, I think, at like establishing like the core group of characters and like where they
Mhm.
were at to,
Mhm.
deal with the threat of Thanos and then the aftermath in Endgame.
Of course.
Um, with the Mandoverse, I mean, I'm always willing and hopeful to be proven wrong. Like, what else could I want than to love a Star Wars movie?
Mhm.
That's all. That's all I want. But I don't see the Mandoverse cooking in a way that it's going to set itself up to stand alone in a film that's going to feature one of the most iconic villains
Yeah.
of the EU, and then
Well,
brings it for itself the trio problem.
uh-huh.
It's like you're gonna make a movie about the greatest threat the New Republic is facing after the Empire and before the New Order, and Luke, Han, and Leia. Where are they? Is it gonna be only like Mando, the little kids from Skeleton Crew, and Ahsoka
Mhm.
and Sabine and
Mhm.
Ezra? It's like, I mean, I don't want to call them B tier because they're definitely not B tier, but
No.
but you don't go see Avengers to see Ant-Man fight Thanos. You
No.
go see Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor
Mhm.
lay down the law. So it's one of those things. And again, like I trust Filoni. I know the man cooks. He's got the
Yes.
ingredients. But I think the movie itself carries with it like so much baggage
Yeah.
that can only backfire, especially with the landscape of fandom as we know it nowadays, and how there's so much entitlement going around with how we watch these films and
How
these
you
shows and
expect it
what
to go.
we want
Mhm.
them to be instead of just like
Mhm.
allowing them to be. That I think it's just gonna be rough. And as much as I've liked a lot of the Filoni episodes that he's directed, I don't think that he's got that visual language in live action yet that gives him panache,
Of
to be
course.
to like make a beautiful film necessarily.
Mhm.
Maybe from here to then that will change.
But yeah, it could
He
change,
gets a
sure.
he gets a good cinematographer, and I'll eat my words.
Yeah.
But so far, I'm not enthused for that. Like, I feel like the Mandoverse should probably stick to the
TV, of
to TV, and I don't say that as a negative. I say that as a positive. I love all those shows,
course.
but I'm excited for Ray's story to
Me
continue,
too, dude. Oh my
especially
god.
because it's not a secret for people that listen to this podcast. I'm not a fan of Rise of Skywalker
Uh-huh.
in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not true. There's things about the movie that I do enjoy, but as a whole, I didn't like it. I liked
Not your thing.
where Ray's story was going in Last Jedi,
Mhm.
and then kind of Rise of Skywalker undid a lot of those things for me in a way that like I wanted to, see her become her full potential instead of
Of
kind of
course.
again Ouroboros, kind of come back to a desert planet, sliding down, and being harassed by an old lady.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's I get it's like poetry, it rhymes, but like we need to get our head out of our ass sometimes
Look,
with that
I
thing.
I think it's so important that you brought up the fact that how will Dave's stuff translate into a movie? That is a big feat, you know? And I would also agree with you that it probably could be the one that could have the most vitriolic reaction, from super fans like us, but also super anti fans that we know exist in this space. So like
Hate
uh
watchers.
yes, hate watchers, and like Ray to me has the most potential as a character because if you do a movie set after Rise of Skywalker, it is fresh. As
Mhm.
long as you don't bring the First Order back, I think I will be deeply happy. Like, make this new threat a new, genuine threat that none of us expected, you know?
And that's what I want with this movie because okay,
Um,
and this is gonna be my
Wish
design
list.
my
The
design slash architect slash
yeah.
selfish fan hat on. When I came into the sequel, I love the sequel trilogy. Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
I mean, with the reservations I have, Rise of Skywalker
Hmm.
notwithstanding, I love the sequel trilogy.
Yes, of course.
Uh, but when I was going into it, one of the things that I wanted from it is something that we got in the prequels, and it's seeing how the world was different.
Oh, so different.
And despite whatever flaw we want to talk about that the prequel trilogy had, one flaw it did not have was production design. All the
Oh,
ships were beautiful. Coruscant was
it
amazing.
knew
Naboo was
it
great.
knew what it wanted to be, like
It it was
through and
very
through.
clear. It was very clear, and it was very purposeful. And I really appreciated that it has such a distinct visual difference
Hmm.
from the original trilogy, while still homaging, right? Especially when you
Hmm.
get to Revenge of the Sith,
Of
and you see
course.
like how stuff starts to turn into that.
Uh-huh.
That I wanted that from the sequel as well. I'm just like I was very excited to be like, oh, how has design changed in the galaxy? Because I'm a design nerd, right? I'm an
A bit.
architect. I love Doug Shang. I
Uh-huh.
I eat I eat up all those making of documentaries. I love seeing like all the designers come up
Process.
with all the process and how they come up with
Sure.
things. And so like I'm just like, God damn, like what does the galaxy look like 30 years after Return of the Jedi? It must be completely different. Especially like if everything was so different in
In the
the 20
prequels,
in the 20 odd
20
years.
years, yeah.
So 30 years must be, oh my God, let's go, son. And then like we get Force Awakens, which as much as I love it, it's like, oh, stormtroopers look
The
like Apple.
X-Wings,
Stormtroopers look like
The
Apple
tie
designed them.
didn't even change, dude. The
The-
TIE fighter's
the-
the same design.
They only inverted the colors. That's all they did.
That's it.
The Tie Fighter T-70. I was like, oh man, like I'm
The
not saying
Star
don't have. I'm not
Destroyers.
saying don't have Tie Fighters, but if you see Star Wars Resistance, which I don't love that show,
Sure.
but there's a T-85 there, like the
Mhm.
the the New Republic Navy X-wing there. I'm like, see, there we go. Like you got
Yes.
you can. It's still not exactly what I want, but it's like different enough where it's just like, okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like the visual language of Force Awakens and especially Rise of Skywalker was very lazy to like
Yeah.
be, it was literally engineered to pull out our nostalgia strings. Because if you go into Last Jedi, I mean, the Kylo Ren's TIE silencer, the First Order dreadnought,
Mhm.
like all the supremacy.
Uh-huh.
Like Ryan Johnson started cooking and being like, okay,
Uh-huh. A
let's
little bit
start
different.
let's start making things different. And that's what I
Uh-huh.
want in Star Wars. Is like, let's progress and see difference.
Yeah.
And then we go into Rise of Skywalker and say, okay, let's just bring back
Dude,
Star
I
Destroyers.
completely agree. The fact that you're bringing this up is so interesting to me because I hadn't had the I haven't given that consideration, the digesting of if TPM's 20 years or some more, a little bit more or less between, 15 years actually before, what we get in A New Hope
Mhm.
and like drastically different design, even everything from the interactions on the heads up displays and the dials in front of him on the N of the N1 Starfighter, all different. And then you get TFA and TLJ, which, like you said, notably had some design differences. Uh, and Tross, like it didn't feel like there was any progress. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I honestly, you see it so weirdly in Mandalorian where you get this weird, like, okay, there has been progress, but it wasn't in the way that you would expect it. Like,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
the Razor Crest is one of the coolest designs ever. And that was a very unique design to Star Wars, but it was apparently an older ship model from what we would call the prequel era. And same with the N1 Starfighter being refurbished to look new. Like, there's ways you can do it
Right.
where it's not an iPhone version of the Stormtrooper helmet. I'm sure you remember that discourse in 2014, but like it looks
Mhm.
like an iPhone Stormtrooper helmet. But like, yes, with this new story with Ray, like if it's 15 years beyond Rise of Skywalker, like
It needs to
please
be completely
God,
visually different. Yeah.
make like it needs to have like just something that makes it stunning and things
Mhm,
something that will make it different. Like maybe she can be in the Red 5 X-wing that she flies off in Tross. You can do that. You can get out
mhm.
with that. But like make these enemies
Modify it.
or
She says
modify
she's
it. She's always done that. Like please don't give me another like First Order remnant. Like there's just so
no.
much more, man. There's so
It's
much more.
it's hilarious because, and again, I don't want to like let my preconceptions taint
Sure, of course.
my expectation of the
Yes.
movie. However, like, there's lots of things. Full disclosure, like for when like the EU was a big thing, like I didn't read
Mhm.
all the books. I read
Yeah.
some of the books, and I played Shadows of the Empire, and I played all these
Mhm.
things. I played Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy.
Yep.
So like in my mind, I had like this Star Wars post Return of the Jedi image in my mind of what that could be, and like now, like I have an even bigger idea of
Of
what that
course.
could be because of what we've seen and what I can expect and whatnot. And one of the things, again, with design is planets and locations. And
Oh
one
god,
thing
yeah.
that I think was a disservice to the sequel trilogy was that they didn't give us exotic locations. They
Mm-mm.
kind of went back to do, well, let's just go to funky places on Earth like George did in the OT and just call it a new planet, which
Yeah.
fine, but why don't you do that and then augment it?
Oh my
It's like, yeah,
god.
you're somewhere on Earth, but then make it feel a little like not Camino, like Felucia or something like
Oh
that.
my
Yeah,
god.
you're
And
in a
dude,
redwood, but give me some Avatar stuff and like
of
augment
course.
Earth landscape so it still feels alien while still being rooted like in a real Earth location. So you get
Mhm.
both things, like George prequel planet and then
Yeah.
OT planets. I think that's kind of what we need to start
See,
doing if we go in that direction. Start hybridizing.
uh-huh. I think I will say, and I know it's not your favorite one, but in The Rise of Skywalker, Exegol is
Oh,
one
Exegol
of
is
the
great. Yeah.
one of the more incredible designs for what the sequel trilogy gave us. And I agree, there is a
The only problem with
genuine
Exegol is that we couldn't see it, but
exactly. But there is a genuine nature that needs to be found about these planets, and I think Dave Filoni and Favreau killed it with Mandalore being a glass planet because it's
Mhm,
been
mhm,
bombed, and you're like, oh man, that gives me number one context for history. It makes sense why Mandalore is in rubble. Like it's toxic. You can't even go there until they
mhm,
get there, and it's not. And then they go underground, and there's this living forest underground. And like that to me is brilliant world building, and maybe that's the one thing the sequels lacked is the idea of world building. Whereas for me personally, the prequels are nothing but world building. I mean, you
Mhm, mhm,
you
mhm,
you focused way more on the lead up to the pod race than actually what it meant. It meant this kid's freedom, but all you
mhm,
were thinking about was the damn racers and the music
mhm.
and the flags marching and the race itself, where you almost lost the context of what was the entire point. This kid winning his freedom, and being able to become a Jedi. So how can we refine that and find this beautiful moment of cohesion in post sequel trilogy world? Like, you know, will will Grogu show up? I know that's so silly, but like, will we get a connective nature through this new Ray film? Will John Boyega be in it? Like, I don't know.
Yes.
I would
Yes,
love that. I would love that, but like, you've got to go somewhere different. You've got to, give
I
us
agree.
something almost tonally similar, not similar, but tonally cohesive, but also give us a stark contrast in terms of design. I agree. Like, bring battle droids. Do something unique.
One thing that I it's not gonna happen, and I don't wanna hype myself up for it. But
Here we
one
go.
thing that and I think it would be clever, and it's something that
Yeah.
I think, could okay, I don't wanna say could happen because whatever.
Hmm.
What do I know?
What do you know?
What
What
do
do
I
you
know?
know?
I'm always wrong. Uh, Please hire me, Lucasfilm. It's, we know that Luke set up the academy in
Yes.
whatever planet
Yeah.
in Mando, but
Hmm.
I think it would be really cool if Rey set up her academy in Yavin 4.
Oh my God! Right?
And kinda
Wouldn't that be
like
awesome?
and you're tying it back to the EU.
Yep.
It's like you get, like, all those, like, because I remember, like, in all the video games, like, being inside the Masasi temple, and Luke's
Uh-huh.
at the top teaching everybody, like, in the jungle, and I'm just like, I mean, what better way to kinda, like, pay homage to
Uh-huh.
Jedi Academy and, like, all the
Uh-huh.
EU stuff than to kinda, like, see that as Rey carrying on that
Yes.
torch, and it'd be
Yeah.
cool, like, there's a fucking Ghost Force scene where like Rey has a
Yep.
little council with everybody. You don't need
Ah,
to listen to them, but you just see that she's communing with them,
of
and that way,
course.
like they don't take the spotlight from her because it's still her movie. But
Mhm.
you see that
Mhm.
like she still has a connection to the Jedi. It's the Jedi live in
Of
her,
the
right?
past. Yeah. Be with
So,
me.
but that's one thing. It's just like I'm not gonna be heartbroken if she's not in Javin
Mm-mm.
4, but
Mhm.
something that if they did that, I'd be like, hey,
That's how you
you did
do it.
right. You did
That's
right.
the right way to do it. God, I
Before we sign off,
yes, of course.
Scotty, tell us a little bit about Bombadcast. What do you guys have going on?
Look at you. So we actually dropped news today that we have a full-time producer for the Bombadcast, a good friend of mine, John. He was in my wedding. I actually bought his car. Like, we've been really close the past, 40 years. We've been friends, and he's changed my life for the better. And John has had the opportunity to work on pretty big projects. One of the bigger ones, you may have actually heard of it, Closed for Storm, which is a documentary made by Bright Sun Films. And it was all about this theme park in New Orleans, Six Flags, that closed down and never opened back up after Katrina. And John has had a lot of his, you know, feet in different projects and being involved in different things. And he offered to help produce Bombadcast and try to elevate us to a new level of professionalism, but also extending our reach in terms of content creators. And yeah, I'm happy to say he's our hidden third member. He won't be on screen often, but
He's like George Martin, basically.
yes, yeah, hey, look at you. I love you. No, yeah, he's also, he's very aware of what people like and what works, and he's just a brilliant and wonderful guy, and he's gonna be our hidden third member that we just announced today. And we're not in a hiatus moment of any sorts. We're gonna record probably next week and do a stream. But what I'm trying to get at is there will be an increase in things that hopefully most people like. Bombadcast can be kind of random in terms of our content coverage, but also it's fun. It's a good time.
Mhm.
Everyone usually there laughs and has a good time. You were on for one of them. Was it not Mad Libs? So it's Fortune Cookies of the Force, and like that was a great episode where we analyze what this fortune cookie meant. And so like,
Mhm, mhm.
Bombadcast has been almost going on for 5 years. Come next June, so
In dog
we
years, that's an adult.
and that's an adult. That's a full ass dog, man. That dog is eating a lot of food a day. No,
Yeah,
but
gotta take it to the
no,
vet.
I'm glad you asked. One thing that I'm very excited about, there's no set time of release. I'm gonna work on it actually after we get off this discussion together. I'm gonna release a really big episode about midi chlorians. A big not episode, like a big video essay. There's a lot of misconceptions on what they are, and the Lucasfilm has been kind of quiet. That's one of my wishes.
M
If you
counts,
want,
M counts.
if you yeah, imcount. If you want Yavin 4 for your Ray story, I want midi chlorians for my Ray story or my Mangold story because they have been
I
very
think the Mangold
weary.
I think the Mangold one
Oh,
is a good spot
there's
for sure.
potential,
Yeah.
if he's willing to go that route, I don't know if I'll ever stop talking about it. So, yeah, I'm doing a really big video on midichlorians, and if anyone has any misconceptions of them, my design of this, I'm a teacher. I wrote it like a lesson plan, and I'm
Yeah.
presenting it like a lesson plan. Is to make it to where when you leave the video, you don't have any more questions. And every fact has been displayed by George himself, by Rick McCallum, by even George interviews from the '70s, J.W. Rinsler. Like all, there's so many sources that people don't know about that have all these preconceived notions of what they are, and I want to subside that and kind of explain to you how it ties in with the overall themes of the Force, both cosmic and living. It's I'm
Mhm.
telling you, it's been an extensive project. I spent my
That's like a
entire
doozy.
Oh, boy, is it. It would like you said, it would give Star Wars Explain a run for his
Alex
money.
Damon, watch
So,
out. Retire, retire.
I retire, this is it.
Hang up the
I
gloves.
I
Find
am
something else.
willing to say that someone like him and, I wouldn't be shy to say I do have a friend at Lucasfilm, that I feel like I could send it to that person and he would also be like, "Oh, wow." Like, that's actually pretty comprehensive. So,
You're gonna learn them a thing or
I'm
two.
proud of this. I don't boast often, but I am extremely proud of what I've put into this. So, just know that's
I'm
gonna
very
show up.
excited. Very
I
excited.
hope I hope it's a Christmas gift. I hope it's done by Christmas. That's my plan. It's 62 pages for this script. So,
Well, I hope it drops on Christmas so that I
ah,
be with family. Why would I want to be with family when I can
four
listen to
4 hours
Scotty?
just sitting watching in your phone this
Yeah.
dumbass lecture. But
Why
no,
not?
thank you for acting, Gus, and I will say thank you for letting me be on your show. This entire experience has
Oh,
been
please,
wonderful.
please.
I
No.
love talking to you. Anytime that you need me ever again, never hesitate.
Oh.
Seriously,
Well, that's dangerous because
I'm telling you.
your phone might be ringing.
I got a text today. What time was it? Let's see. I'm just kidding.
It was like at 11. I was like,
11. You're like, can you? I'm like, I can. Don't
I
even
was like,
stress, baby.
let me check with Joe. Let me check with Joe.
Yeah, I had to check with Joe. Oh, look, yeah, it was at 10:16 a.m. I love you.
That was right after my morning. Whatever. No, no, that's after. It's in the afternoon. Uh,
Ever.
Scotty, I would love to be talking to you because like we can keep going. We can keep going.
We
But there's
can.
unfortunately like there's
Or
time limits to
sleep.
these things. Well, there's sleeps. I have to edit this. What the Edge of I always forget the name of the book.
Oh,
Of
yeah.
Darkness.
Yes.
The Eye of Darkness arrived. I was calling it by accident to Sean Room. Edge of Darkness, and
Edge of Darkness.
that becomes real spicy real quick.
That's
So
the song. Isn't Edge of Darkness? No, I'm thinking Edge of 17 by Stevie Nicks. Never mind. Sorry.
see,
Reminder.
it all gets garbled up. I need to at least read 10 pages before I pass out,
Good.
and 'cause since I can't stay awake anymore,
Yeah.
35. But yeah, we're gonna definitely gonna do this again. This was a fun one, and
Again.
there's so much more things that I wanted to ask and keep going on,
Of
but
course.
there's a time and a place.
You gotta take a
And
bath. You gotta warm yourself back
yeah,
up.
that's true. Don't tell anybody. But where can people find you? I know you said you
Look.
have your documentary, yeah, documentary
Yeah,
coming
pretty
out
much.
about midi-chlorians,
Uh-huh.
acclaimed documentary, in Cannes. I heard the premiere's going to be at.
Yes.
But where can people find it and you on the socials,
Um,
on the YouTubes?
yeah, definitely what you can do is you type in the Bombadcast.
As I said in Bombadcast, plug your stuff.
Plug your stuff. Plug your stuff. No, plug my stuff. So, if you want to find me, obviously you can find me on social media. It's Scotty ScottyJayro. That's it. You can find me on any site. I'm usually there. But most definitely, if you want to watch more of our content, things that are kind of goofy and silly, but also have some serious tones to them, you can watch the Bombadcast on YouTube. Just type in the Bombadcast. The first thing that'll pop up is probably a reaction video that got us very popular. So watch that if you want to watch me cry. But overall, we go live every Thursday, and we have been for a long time now. and we plan on doing it soon as well. So that being said, yeah, no, it's been a privilege to be here, and I'm
It's
very
been an
excited to
absolute
have
joy.
the opportunity to do this again in the near future.
It's what a great way to end a Monday because Monday was
Monday.
not wonderful. Let's be
No, it's
honest.
cold.
It was. Don't get me started. Don't
Frigid.
get me started. I'm all snug. I'm all snugs now, so it's
I
okay.
know, me too.
But yeah, we were going to leave like all those links down in the description below so that you
So
can
wonderful.
follow Scotty and Bombadcast and Jerry and watch all of their beautiful, beautiful content
Just
because they're amazing people with great things to say that you should definitely check out. Uh, the first time I tried, but definitely not the last time. Thank you,
definitely
Scotty.
not. Of course, stay Bombad, dude.
And for everyone else, thank you so much. This has been Triad of the Force. We hope you have enjoyed this episode talking about the heir to the empire, question mark, Dave Filoni. Don't forget to check us out on all of our social medias. You can find us everywhere where podcasts can be found on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, like all the things. Just make sure to look for Triad of the Force and you'll find us on your Podchaser, socials, Twitter, I'm not calling it X, even though I guess I just did, Threads, Blue Sky, Facebook. Just search for Triad of the Force and you will find us. But that's it for today. Until the next time, may the Force be with you.